Alright, unfortunately, we need to talk about analytics this week. And I know that most of you come to this channel for film study and learning about techniques and coverages and play designs and all that. But right now, the biggest topic in the league is analytics and how math is apparently the devil. So love it or hate it, we have to do this. Now, full disclosure, I am typically not a math guy. I went to film school for a reason because I only had to take one math class to get a degree, and I had to take that math class twice. For lack of a better word, I'm what the kids today call a fucking moron. But the one kind of math that I actually am better at than most is football math, and understanding why analytics, no matter what some of the Sunday morning talk shows will tell you, is actually a good thing overall for the sport. I'm going to be going through a few of the biggest analytics-based decisions that we saw across the NFL in the last week, because I think overall there's been a severe lack of context when looking at these decisions in a vacuum relative to the play calls and executions that were made after those decisions. We'll talk about the methodology, the good calls, the bad calls, and most importantly, we'll talk about why the process of deciding to go for it is a very different thing to criticize than the actual play calls that are made when deciding to go for it. I apologize in advance for how many numbers I'm about to throw at you. Lord knows I didn't expect to have to do this week, but just bear with me and we'll get through this together. And by the way, thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this week's show. You can hit that link down in the description below for a bunch of free meals and free shipping, but more on them in a little bit. For now, let's dive into this film. Let's start with Chiefs versus Chargers from all the way back last Thursday night, where Brandon Staley went for it on 4th down 5 separate times and failed on 3 of them, potentially leaving 9 points on the board when they didn't go for field goals in the red zone. The Chargers lost that game by 6 points, obviously, so at least on paper, those decisions to go for it cost the Chargers the game. Or did they? Again, we have to separate the process of making a decision from the play that is called and executed after making that decision. So let's just look at that process first. After talking to a couple different analytics staffers from around the league, one of the bigger factors that they take into account in their statistical models that tell them to either go for it or not go for it is drive success rate. Drive success rate is the measure of how often any series of downs, starting with 1st and 10, will result in either a fresh new set of downs by moving the chains or result in a touchdown. The Chiefs, who the Chargers were playing against, have the highest drive success rate in the entire league at just under 80%, and so on nearly 80% of series where they have a 1st and 10, they're likely going to move those chains. And then on 80% of those new sets of downs, they're going to move the chains again, and so on and so forth, until they get all the way down into the red zone where they have a 59.3% success rate of scoring a touchdown. To visualize the Chiefs' overwhelmingly bonkers DSR, I'm going to borrow an example from Troy Russell, a Colts analyst over at Stampede Blue, and I'm going to draw up a football field with a possession starting at the 25-yard line following a touchback. So that's a pretty normal scenario here. And at the same time, let's assume that on any successful conversion of downs, the offense gains an average of 15 yards, which again is pretty realistic because most converted 1st downs are not exactly right at the sticks, and they'll go past the chains by any number of yards. Since a successful touchdown drive from this starting point would need to be 75 yards, and a successful 1st down conversion in this model, that's an average of 15 yards, we know that it will take an average of 5 successful 1st down conversions to score a touchdown. The probability of all of those conversions happening and of a touchdown being scored is just the Chiefs' current drive success rate multiplied 5 times over. So if we just take that 0.79 as the DSR and run those numbers, we get a 24.3% touchdown success rate for any Chiefs drive starting at the 25-yard line, which is kind of crazy. Even if we lower that last 15-yard stretch to the goal line to their red zone touchdown rate instead of just their total DSR, which may or may not be how these models are built, I'm not entirely sure and it could vary from team to team, we would still get a 23% chance of all Chiefs drives that start at the 25 to result in a touchdown. For comparison, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have the lowest DSR in the league, they have just a 7.4% chance of scoring a touchdown on any given drive starting from their own 25 when we run their DSR through this calculation. So it's a massive difference overall between an elite chain moving offense and a very, very bad one. Now, when it comes to the Chargers' decision specifically to go for it on 4th and goal from the 5-yard line on their first drive of the game, let's take into account all of the factors at play here. It's the 5-yard line deep in Kansas City territory, so even if they failed, that would still force the Chiefs to drive 95 yards down the field the other way just to get a touchdown. And plugging in that starting field position into our loose DSR-based napkin math here, which is in no way as sophisticated as the real models that teams use, by the way, we can reasonably estimate that the Chiefs have an 11.3% chance to get a touchdown when starting at their own 5-yard line, and about a 24.3% chance of getting into Harrison Butker's field goal range from that same position. So it's pretty unlikely that the Chargers will be giving up points from that spot on the field. At the same time, going into Week 15, the Chargers were 7th in the league at 4th down conversion rate at a whopping 61.9% compared to the league average of 52.6%. So taking all of that math into account, the Chargers were looking at basically 62% odds of getting 7 points themselves and 11% odds of the Chiefs getting 7 points after a failed 4th down attempt. And that gives us a grand total worst case scenario odds of the Chargers failing and the Chiefs succeeding and getting that 14-point swing of just 7%. On paper, it was a very remote chance of all of that happening, but by God, all of it happened anyway. The Chargers failed because of the extremely unfortunate play that happened with Donald Parham, which was a great ball by Herbert, by the way, that 99 times out of 100 would have been caught for a touchdown, but as Parham was completing the process of the catch, he unfortunately was knocked unconscious, and thankfully seems to be doing okay now after being discharged from the hospital a few days ago, so hopefully he's still doing okay. But after that failed 4th down attempt, just to add insult to injury, the Chiefs completed that 7% moonshot of a scenario and went 95 yards in 11 plays to get that touchdown in response. Every statistical model on planet Earth would have told Brandon Staley to go for that 4th down because 93% of the time, even with how great the Chiefs offense is, that result would not happen, and yet, it did. On the flip side, how about the second 4th down call of the night from the Chiefs' 33-yard line? It's 4th and 1, and again, if the Chargers fail here and give the ball back to Kansas City, they will still have a 23% chance of scoring a touchdown and about a 49.3% chance of getting into easy field goal range. Going for it here is a risk, but the Chargers were converting at about a 60% clip so far this season. They were already down 10-7 at this point, so the math was in their favor to go for it and get a new set of downs and try to get a touchdown later in the drive. They did end up going for it, and they did get it on a sneak, and 5 plays later, they did get that touchdown to make it 14-10 instead of, at best, a 10-10 tie. The statistical models were correct here, and thankfully, unlike their first try, the execution on the field worked as well. Now, on the third scenario of that night, where Brandon Staley went for it on 4th and goal from inside the 5-yard line with 3 seconds left in the first half, this one I will give you was a bad call by Brandon Staley that seemed a little bit too desperate. Even if they failed here, it's not like the Chiefs would have been backed up and you get a chance at a safety. The half is just over. There's only 3 seconds left, so either you get points or you don't. And literally the only way to help the Chiefs here is to just get 0 points if you're the Chargers. In this scenario, the mathematically prudent thing to do is to just take the highest odds you can get at just getting points, which would have been a field goal. The Chargers obviously went for it instead with kind of a variation of a shield screen from a 3x1 nub look. Daniel Sorensen read it all the way and knocked it down. And I mean, let's be honest, the play call was rather predictable here. They run it all the time in the red zone, so the Chiefs knew it was coming, and the Chargers came away with no points as a result. To me, not only was this a bad, predictable play call, but it was also bad process and decision-making from Staley, and it was one of his only bad decisions of the night, in my opinion. On the Chargers' fourth down try of the night, they were still up by 1 point, somehow, 14-13, from the Kansas City 28-yard line about halfway through the third quarter. Again, if the Chargers fail here, the Chiefs have somewhere in the ballpark of a 23% chance to score a touchdown and about a 49% chance of getting into field goal range based on our very, very loose example calculations from earlier. Knowing that, the odds of the Chiefs scoring from this spot on the field are virtually identical to their odds of just starting fresh after a kickoff. So really, the decision for Brandon Staley and his analytics team at this point is all about possessions. From this time in the third quarter, they might get 4 more possessions for the rest of the game based on NFL averages, and even with the Chargers' own drive success rate being second in the league at 77.5%, it's very possible that this is the last time the Chargers are going to get a good chance to score from inside the 30-yard line. So for Staley specifically, it's kind of now or never. They can either kick a field goal and go up by 4, which doesn't help at all because they would still be losing if the Chiefs get a touchdown on the next drive, and Staley would have to live with the fact that he might not get another good scoring chance. Or he can try to convert on 4th down, try to get a touchdown after that, and maybe have a chance to go up by 9 points with a 2-point conversion, which would make it a 2-possession game. That would force the Chiefs to try to score twice to get back in the game when time is already working against Kansas City to do so. Mathematically, situationally, emotionally, however you want to slice it, going for it was the right call. The problem, however, was the execution of the call. The Chargers ran a stick concept against cover 2 man from the Chiefs defense, some call this cover 5, and that was an okay play call by the way, and they got the matchup they wanted for a big body like Jared Cook to have a leverage advantage against the much smaller Nick Bolton. We're talking about a 6'5" tight end boxing out a 6-foot flat linebacker on an outbreaking route, so this should be a completion and a 4th down conversion all day long. But unfortunately, Herbert just left the ball way too inside. He put it behind Cook, who had to turn back into Bolton to try to get it, and Bolton broke it up. If Herbert left the ball outside like he was supposed to, that's probably a much easier catch for Cook to try to make, and they likely move the chains and keep on rolling. Unfortunately for Staley though, this was yet another good decision statistically that just didn't work out in terms of execution on the field. In a night full of missed chances for the Chargers, the main thing that annoys me about that game is that people are blaming Brandon Staley for making the same decisions that have served him well all year long, instead of commenting on the players on the field or the offensive play callers up in the booth for not paying off those decisions after they're made. I just do not get that line of thinking, and I could say the same thing for that failed 2-point conversion at the end of the Ravens game last week, where they took the Packers, arguably the best team in the entire league, mind you, all the way down to the mat with a backup quarterback and like 2 functioning weapons left on offense. It was an insane performance from the Ravens overall, and John Harbaugh should be proud of how they fought, but I did notice that he was getting a lot of criticism for going for 2 in the end instead of just kicking an extra point to tie it up with 42 seconds left in the game. Again, you have to look at the math here and at the situational context in who the Ravens were playing against. This is Aaron Rodgers with 42 seconds left in the game and a timeout remaining. In terms of drive success rate, if you just kick an extra point instead of going for 2 and potentially taking a lead, he still has to get a field goal in either scenario, starting from his own 25-yard line on the ensuing drive, with, again, 1 more timeout to work with. The Packers have the 4th highest DSR in the NFL at 76.2%. So from the 25, using our napkin math from earlier, Rodgers has a 43.9% chance just to get to the Ravens' 30-yard line, which is well within field goal range. And that's not even taking into account that Rodgers in the final minute of games where he needs a field goal is usually on a completely other plane of existence compared to most quarterbacks. So realistically, the Ravens only had 2 options here. Either take the 50-50 shot of converting for 2, and then take another 50-50 shot, if not even worse, that Rodgers would just go down the field and win anyway, or take the near 100% shot that Justin Tucker converts the extra point, and still have that same 50-50 shot at best that Rodgers goes and wins the game. Either way, your best case scenario if you kick the extra point is that you have to survive Aaron Rodgers 1 more time in overtime. Either you die quickly but have a 50% chance to win, or you die slowly and probably have a 25% chance to win. Choosing to die slowly against a guy like Rodgers really is not going to help anybody, so Harbaugh made the right decision. Try to take a lead with a 2-point conversion, and then just start praying. That's pretty much all he could do. The problem wasn't with the call to go for it, it was on the execution on the play that they dialed up when they went for it. It was a sprint right pivot concept from a 3-by-1 look where Mark Andrews, their only effective weapon for the night, was isolated to the boundary. Everybody in the stadium knew where this ball was going, especially the Packers, and you can even see that Darnell Savage was reading it the entire way, and he damn near picked it off, even coming from depth. There was literally no question what this throw was going to be, and the frustrating part about it is that if Huntley either threw a little bit better ball outside to the pylon, it still could have been conceivably completed, or if he came off of that read and looked for Hollywood Brown running wide open across the back of the end zone, he could have converted on that throw as well. Once again, just like in that Chargers game, whether you want to talk about math or just basic common sense when playing against the likes of Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, the decision to go for it was the correct one. The problem was the execution of the plays after the decision. I will not pretend to know everything about football, and I will also not pretend to know everything about analytics. There are a bunch of coaches that I know and a bunch of data scientists that I know that have all forgotten more about football and analytics than I will ever even come close to knowing. But my goal with this channel is to at least try to mesh those two worlds together as best that I can, because there's value in both of them. There's value in experienced football coaches being able to explain technical nuances and play designs and personnel matchups and just kind of give context to why something will or will not work in a short yardage situation. And there's also value in stat heads that can look at huge data sets and explain very clearly why being overly conservative is just a slower way to lose. Both sides of this argument can be right if they just, for once, listen to each other. I don't know if they ever will, but as long as this channel exists, I will try to make that happen. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas. Enjoy the weekend. We got a lot of football to watch. You know, spend some time with your family, stay out of trouble, and I'll be back here next week with another full Film Room episode. So until then, cheers. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode, and again, thank you to our sponsor for this week, HelloFresh. I work a lot of hours every single week, even though I now have editing help for the first time in this channel's history. Shout out to you, Slater. But even with getting some production help now, I still don't have a whole lot of free time to work with during the holiday season, so HelloFresh is my way to still cook good meals at home for me and my wife without spending a whole lot of time doing it. By California standards, my neighborhood is kind of out in the ass end of nowhere, so it takes forever to go to the grocery store and pick out a bunch of food to make meals from scratch, and that's not counting the time it takes to plan out my recipes for the week and put together shopping lists in the first place. But with HelloFresh, I just get all of the recipes and portioned out ingredients delivered right to my door. HelloFresh also makes it easy to make all of their meals too, just by following the instructions. Plus, on average, HelloFresh customers save 28% in cost compared to their local grocery store to buy the same ingredients to make the same meals. And because each meal is portioned out perfectly, you're not buying a bunch of extra food that ends up going to waste. So HelloFresh is more sustainable as well. For people that have very unforgiving schedules like mine, or people that just want to learn to cook good food that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, HelloFresh has been an incredible service for me for a very long time, and I know that you're going to love it too. So if you want to try it out for yourself, please check them out at HelloFresh.com at the link in the description below. Use my code FilmRoom14, and that will get you a total of 14 free meals, plus 3 free gifts and free shipping. Again, that is HelloFresh.com at the link below, promo code FilmRoom14, and that will get you 14 free meals, 3 free gifts, and of course, free shipping. Thank you again to HelloFresh for partnering with us, and we'll see you next week.